They are young, attractive, and bubbly, so why are they dressed so differently? These Singaporean teenagers are ditching this season's trendy attire for something more old school: vintage clothes. It's deja vu on the streets as more puff sleeves and shoulder pads grace the shoulders of Singaporean teenagers. Floral prints have replaced studs as more girls raid their mother's wardrobes or thrift stores for dresses, bags, and accessories from a previous era. Dorset Vic Vintage Boutique at Haji Lane, for one, has seen more teenagers going in to browse and buy. So do you think it's getting more fashionable for teenagers to, raid their mother's closets or go to these vintage shops and buy vintage clothes?
Yeah, I definitely see an increasing trend. More young people these days, they like to wear vintage because, everyone wants to look unique, right? Yeah, so, and vintage pieces, they're all one of a kind. So, yeah, that probably makes them stand out, I guess.
Where do you think that this trend began?
Probably a couple of years back when there were some celebrities like Kate Moss, Julia Roberts, Dieter Von Teese. Yeah, and then they started wearing vintage. So, yeah.
If celebrities are wearing vintage, it's no surprise that teenage girls are also following suit. Razor TV speaks to these three young vintage lovers to find out more about why they wear vintage.
The piece of clothing, right? You actually know that there's a story behind it, and you would always wonder, who was the previous person wearing it. So for me, that is actually vintage.
In some really egotistical way, I guess it makes me stand out from the rest, and I kind of like the designs and the shape and everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess the most basic reason would be to be more individualistic, because if you think about it, kids today, they're all wearing mass-produced clothes like Topshop and Zara and others, and it's just, you see people wearing the same thing all the time. I can spot a Topshop clothing just like that, and I don't really want to be caught in that kind of situation.
How do you get started, wearing vintage clothing and stuff?
It was actually through online, blog surfing. I started surfing blogs. And I came upon Scandinavian blogs, and I really got interested in their fashion sense because they really express themselves through fashion, and many of it which were vintage clothes, because actually it's very good to wear vintage clothes because you are recycling and it's good for the earth.
I actually started when I was reading vintage blogs online, those US bloggers, and I was actually reading and then getting inspiration from them.
So when do you start wearing vintage clothes?
A few years back.
Okay, so now you're 19, so a few years back would be when you were 16?
Yeah.
Okay, how do you get started?
I kind of, a few of my friends were wearing them, and I thought it actually fitted quite nicely. And I was getting quite bored of, the clothes that are out there now, and, I kind of like the whole shape that vintage clothes was giving. Yeah, so I started wearing them and trying them out.
What do you mean by the shape?
Some vintage clothes, they like to focus on the waist, whereas, modern clothes, they like to focus on, the hips and the... Yeah, I have much better waist than hips.
For me, anything above 20 years old is considered vintage.
80s and below. 80s. So what's your favorite era?
It would have to be 1940s to 1960s, where the cocktail dresses were in and where the hippie era. I really love how free they was, and during that era there were so many things that was going on. So I just like how they portray themselves and how fashion was so important.
Vintage dresses, especially from the 50s, because they're so cool.
Because they have
the puff, and they look really nice, and they accentuate the waist and everything.
Okay. So where do you get your vintage clothes from?
I normally shop online, eBay, or some vintage stores online as well, or Salvation Army and thrift stores locally.
Okay, so what kind of thrift stores?
Thrift stores like the one at Salvation Army, there's actually quite a few branches here. Or at Army Market, there's one at Army Market as well.
Where's Army Market?
It's the one where at Lavender MRT, then you have to walk down, where people buy Army supplies.
Oh, okay.
Actually, in Singapore, you can't really find much. You can try Salvation Army.
Okay, which Salvation Army outlet is your favorite one?
I live closest to the Bukit Timah one.
Oh, okay.
So I have a straight bus there, so I'll just sometimes go down myself. And then But like the Serangoon one's good because it's really big. You can find a lot of stuff. eBay, yeah, eBay is a good one as well.
Okay.
Or maybe like overseas, like in Europe or like Bangkok. Yeah.
Flea markets where there are old people around, because those flea markets where there are a lot of young people around, those are like the vintage looking clothes and not the actual vintage clothes. Yeah.
In our next clip, we check out these girls' impressive collections of vintage treasures.